Welcome, folks. This is Brad.
And Ricky.
We are two Texas Jeepers broadcasting to you from North Texas. Grab a drink and follow along as we go on our next adventure. It's 2024, and finally we got the opportunity to make another trip out west. Last year, we'd planned to go back to Moab, but the trip got scrubbed at the last minute. This year, we were in the mood for some cooler weather, so we decided to go back to Colorado instead. The plan was to meet up with a couple of folks in Lake City, run the Alpine Loop, and collect the badges for the area. Brady, one of my regular wheeling buddies, also known as a bad influence, came out with us, and he managed to talk me into doing Blanca Peak Trail. The trail has a little bit of a bad reputation, so I tried to keep it a secret from Ricky for as long as I could. So the three of us left Texas a day early and met up in Fort Garland, Colorado. The town is pretty close to the trailhead, has a decent hotel, a couple of restaurants, and gas stations with diesel and coffee. If you're in the area, I highly recommend making time to check out the Great Sand Dune National Park, which is also really close. We'd been watching the weather pretty close up until the night before, since we didn't want to try this trail if it was all wet. There was about 15 minutes of rain in the morning that Brady pretty accurately referred to as active dust suppression. But the forecast did say after the morning shower we'd have good weather until about 3 in the afternoon. So by 9 o'clock we pulled up to the trailhead and the sun had already come out. A few days before we left Texas, I'd reached out to somebody on the JL Wrangler forums who'd run this trail before. He gave me lots of good info and also agreed to come along and give us pointers in case we had trouble with any of the obstacles. He unloaded a little further up the trail and before I got the camera running, so we'll see him in a few minutes.
It looks like we're driving into Jurassic Park.
Brady was in the lead, I was in the middle, and our game day pickup, Max, was at the rear. There was about 3 miles of this rocky road with a slight grade going up to the base of the mountain. We were maybe halfway to where the climb really starts when we saw these hikers getting started. We left them behind pretty easily at the beginning, but apparently every time we'd stop for an obstacle, they were catching up. When we got to Lake Como, we stopped to take it all in, and they walked up only a few minutes later. Since this is an out and back, we had to go back down the same way we came in, and they left maybe 5 minutes before us. We didn't see them again until we made it past the last Jaws obstacle. It was raining pretty good at that point, so Brady stopped and asked if they'd like a ride down the rest of the way. They agreed and hopped in, and it turns out they were from out of town and just decided to go for a little hike. That's crazy because I only walked uphill about 100 feet and I felt like I was going to die. I'm a lowlander though. I live at 800 feet and here we are up in the clouds already. Finally, we reached the first named obstacle, Jaws 1. There are 2 common lines for this obstacle, high to the right and low to the left. For most folks, going right over the middle will get you high center. You can't really see it from these angles, but the low side puts you pretty close to the edge and leaning towards it. So I think the high side is a little more popular, and that's why both Brady and I went that way. We both have belly pans and either sliders, Brady, or dented rocker panels from the flimsy Mopar steps, me. A side note, I've been waiting probably 2 years for Artec to release rock sliders that work with their belly pan. All of the bolt-on sliders I've seen that attach to the frame use the same bolt holes as the belly pan. I'm hopeful they'll come out with something soon though, since I did see one of their prototypes on a Gladiator. Anyway, I watched several videos on this trail and thought a diagonal done right would work. You'd need to start low and transition over the hump diagonally to keep from turtling. I've got a 2.5-inch AEV lift which keeps the factory control arms so I don't have a ton of flex. We didn't talk about it, but Max must have seen the same thing and I'm glad he tried it. He's also on a 2.5-inch lift with 37s, but I think he's got more flex with his aftermarket control arms.
Maybe. I don't want to be downhill.
Yeah, I would turn downhill at this point.
Lockers will definitely help.
He's not locked?
I did that in Missouri a couple weeks ago. Tried something really hard on lock and it's really stupid. It wasn't on purpose.
Nice. There you go.
Found the new line.
I think you did. Yeah.
It looks settled, it looks okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if that line will work going down too.
I think the line of Max would actually be a little easier going down than coming up.
Andy did try to do it. The theory is that he didn't angle downhill quite enough. He also wasn't locked, so when his left rear lost traction, his right rear spun the whole Jeep, making it look like he just tried to drive straight over. It seemed to me the trail was becoming more and more rock and bigger rocks. I kept wondering how hikers could walk this without twisting an ankle. But like Bachman and Turner said, I ain't seen nothing yet.
Cool cabins and photo up here on the left. You pull up and then walk ahead and get a picture back down the trail. That's pretty cool.
Okay.
A little further up, we stopped for a minute to take pictures of our Jeeps. I mean, look at the old cabin ruins.
I can stop and take a photo.
See, the cabin's in there.
Hey, if you're coming up on that water crossing, stop for me, Brady.
According to Max, and also based on what I've seen in other videos, the Holbrook Creek crossing has gotten washed out the last few years. This side has a much steeper entry, and the boulders either migrated downstream or are a lot more exposed than they were before. Max's line looked pretty good going down, and I wanted to try something similar later on. I also like how he takes obstacles slow and careful. I struggle a little bit holding the brake going down ledges with mine. I know the bigger tires are a major factor, but I also wonder if the extra torque of the diesel in low range isn't also adding to the problem. Gravity helps you when you're going this way, but climbing out the other way is a little more challenging. I think the boulder on the right's the main problem. Besides where it's at, it doesn't offer much traction for wet tires. Brady goosed it to get over, and I thought he was gonna flop for a sec.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh god.
Like laying over on this side. You bounce it.
Shortly after the creek crossing, we came up to Jaws 2. As long as being on the edge of a cliff doesn't mess with your head, this one isn't bad. The easy side is to the left. Just put your cliffside tires against the rock that's at the edge and go slow.
There you go.
The part that can get you killed is to the right. If you try climbing the big rock pile and flop, there aren't any trees to stop your roll until you're a long way down.
There you go.
Coming back down, I get a better angle of this section. Like before, watch your tire placement and take it slow. I admit, a lot of times when I hear, "don't wheel alone," I think, meh, but I'm already thinking that's good advice for this trail, and we've only done 2 obstacles. About a half mile from Jaws 2 is a rough rock slab that will lean you towards another cliff edge. It's not bad, but a squeamish passenger might want to hop out to supervise.
Oh, that's the old pucker effect right there. Oh, I should probably get out.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna stay further left though.
Okay.
Ricky, you may enjoy getting out.
Actually, I know.
She was already on it.
Brad, don't go any more passenger.
The Tippy section is followed almost immediately by even more rocks. This section is sort of like a practice V-notch for Jaws 2.5. That's right behind it.
What was that?
Okay. This is Jaws 2.5 right here. That was not. See how flexed?
Oh my gosh, you want me to get this?
Yes.
Now Jaws 2.5, it's a proper V-notch. Your axles are flexed opposite directions and you gotta work for traction.
There you go. Yeah, you're on it now. Right now? There you go. Keep it straight. Yeah, you're good now.
Coming down this one is easier than the others, and since there isn't a cliff to worry about, you could probably bone it up pretty good and still make it down okay. Just past Jaws 2.5 is Jaws 3. This is easily the toughest obstacle we've seen so far. In fact, I'd say this is probably the toughest obstacle I've ever done. Trails Off-Road rates Blanca Peak as a 6 for the mandatory obstacles, but an 8 if you do the optional ones. The only thing I've done that's even close is Poughkeepsie Gulch, with the somewhat famous obstacle called the Wall. They only rate that one as a 4 for both mandatory and optional.
You're not hung up on anything, you're just climbing two slabs at the same time.
I'm not hung up.
No, your back driver is right just behind a big rock, so you're climbing two at a time.
The story I heard for Jaws 3 is that people would try this on four-wheelers and flip over backwards. I imagine the stone is pretty unforgiving to an unprotected melon being squished by a four-wheeler. That may have contributed to the most deadly trail reputation, but there really isn't much risk of flipping backwards in an actual vehicle. Supposedly, that's what led to a new helipad down at the bottom and a bypass being added for this obstacle. Okay, keeping it real. I cut out several failed attempts here. Brady and I both needed several tries and about 2.5 minutes for him, 3.5 minutes for me. This thing is a monster. Max, on the other hand, he makes it look easy.
That's the steepest spot right there.
Even though this was the hardest of the obstacles we did going up, going down wasn't too bad. I mean, heck, we all made it on the first try.
Well, that's not where I want to be. We'll see if it climbs. There you go, keep the momentum. You got it.
When you're at the top of Jaws 3, you make a left to look at a giant slab of rock. Then, you keep going up. Anyway, moving forwards again, and here's those badass casual hikers I told you about earlier. Once we got to Lake Como, we got out so we could look around and take pictures. We decided to skip Jaws 4 on the other side of the lake so we could turn back. We wanted to get past all the obstacles before any downpour, and Max assured us that we could have done that one too, so I was good. We climbed up a little more than 4,000 feet with an average moving speed of only 3.5 miles an hour. In other words, barely faster than a hiker. Once we got back to the bottom, we prepped for the road, shook hands with Max, and got going. We had another 3 hours to get over to Lake City where we'd meet up with Michael and Tim for the next part of the trip. And this is when I got an unexpected phone call from the mom of one of my really good high school friends. She called to tell me Dave was recently diagnosed with an aggressive brain tumor. The odds are stacked against him, but he's still fighting. He's a little younger than I am, so it was a harsh reminder. We don't know what God's plan is, and we can't always count on having it tomorrow. So try to take your adventures and don't put them off. Thanks for watching, be safe, and take care.